For the past year or so, there have been rumors that Nintendo will be upgrading Nintendo Switch 1 games for the Nintendo Switch 2. This first started when we got a report from Eurogamer and VGC that Nintendo was showing off a Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild demo on the Nintendo Switch 2 running at 4K 60 frames per second or much increased resolution and frame rate. We also got information that there was the Matrix demo running on the Nintendo Switch 2 as well. Now, nothing has been confirmed at this point because Nintendo obviously has not even really officially announced the Nintendo Switch 2 in terms of revealing the system, but they've trickled out some information here and there. We do know that there will be backwards compatibility and there will be accounts that you have on your Nintendo Switch they will transfer over. Now, there's also a new rumor from Mike Odyssey over on Twitter. He's also a content creator, and he does say that Nintendo intends to not upsell people on the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild or Switch 1 ports coming to Switch 2, and some of those will be revealed in the initial Nintendo Switch 2 trailer, which is rumored or more like anticipated to be coming in January or so of 2025. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down 10 Nintendo Switch 1 games I expect to be on Nintendo Switch 2 when it comes to upgrades overall. Now, I still feel that Nintendo could upsell or could actually just repackage or even report those games and have it to where if you have it on Nintendo Switch 1, you can update it through a download, or you can simply just buy the game outright on the Nintendo Switch 2 as well. But we do have to wait and see how it's all going to work. But before we get into the list, what's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my vids first. Now, let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to start off with some Legend of Zelda when it comes to Switch 2. So yes, we talked about Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. That's been rumored already. I think that the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild would really benefit from a Nintendo Switch 2 upgrade, and I do think that The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild could easily be one of the best-selling games overall on the Nintendo Switch 2. Despite it being one of the best-selling games on the Switch 1, I absolutely see people buying that game in spades, or at least updating, or whatever the case is, updating to the Nintendo Switch 2. I think that there's going to be a number of people who haven't purchased the game yet that will get into it when it comes to Switch 2, and people that just maybe sold their Switches, sold their games, whatever the case is, coming back when it comes to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, especially if you can play it at 60 frames per second and higher resolution. So I absolutely see that happening. Now, another game is the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and that's The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. This is a game that I do think that some people maybe even held off on buying on the Nintendo Switch, anticipating Nintendo Switch 2 and having better frame rate. This game has better frame rate at times when it comes to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild in comparison, but then at other times, it's kind of a little sketchy, especially when you're doing certain powers that Link has in the game. So if they're able to smooth that out to 60 frames per second and get that rolling in higher resolution, that would be huge for The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and I think it would help it sell considerably more units, especially if you look at there is still a lot of people that probably didn't buy The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom just yet because there were so many rumors swirling around Switch 2 and upgrades. So I think that would be a good thing once again if they did a patch or even if they did a re-release, either one or both. I think that would be great overall for The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and more people can play it and of course enjoy it a bit more, not having some of those frame rate issues that it did have that people experience on the Nintendo Switch 1 version of the game. Next up is The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. This is another game that's plagued by some frame rate issues overall. It looks good graphically, but I think that this game running at higher resolution and everything would look phenomenal, even better than it does because of the simplistic art style and kind of what they were going for. But this game absolutely needs a patch because the frame rate can get so jittery at times in the overworld. Now, sometimes it runs great when it comes to the underground dungeon areas when they don't have to render more of the field kind of all at once, because the game is kind of like open world-ish overall in terms of the size and scope. It's multiple times bigger than The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, but even The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening had some frame rate issues as well, so maybe they can patch that game too. Maybe it can come in a double pack here between Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom and Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. But this game absolutely could benefit from having that 60 frames per second patch, and I think it would bring a lot of people to check it out because the game just had issues overall. So I think it would make a smoother experience. You have all those different echoes and different things you can do. I think it'd make for a little bit better gameplay experience as well. Although when I played it, I didn't necessarily have too many issues, but it's definitely noticeable, especially in the overworld. And sometimes when you're fighting bosses and you're trying to pull out different types of echoes to do different things, you just see some hitches here and there. So Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, obviously that'd be another great game to add to an upgrade list for Nintendo. Next up after this is probably the game that needs it the most out of any of these games, and that is Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. This game is so good, but it's plagued by so many issues on the Nintendo Switch 1. A port to Switch 2 with 60 frames per second would be absolutely ideal. And there's actually a bit of precedence with this because they did this with Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. That was the Wii U game that they put over onto the Nintendo Switch, and they actually got it running at 60 frames per second on the Nintendo Switch version of the game. So I think that they could absolutely do the same thing and would create a much better experience overall, because this game's frame rate is actually worse than what we saw with Hyrule Warriors on the Wii U, which that one wasn't that bad overall, just wasn't 60 frames, but it was like 30 with sometimes going higher. There was some dips, but it wasn't as bad. But Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity just runs bad in many parts of the game, which is a shame. It was pretty much my favorite game back in 2020 because of all the content, storyline, and what it did. I felt that it was very fun to play overall. Variety within the characters, being able to use the champions and everything. I thought it was great, but it had many issues when it comes to the frame rate, and this would be a perfect game to have on the Nintendo Switch 2, just an update, you can play it. I think that they definitely owe us that overall when it comes down to that game. So Hyrule Warriors, probably, like I said, the biggest game that could use this type of update from Switch 1 to Switch 2. Next up, when it comes to first party titles with Nintendo, Astral Chain. This is another game that it runs decent enough on the Nintendo Switch 1, but if you have it at 60 frames per second with this type of action game, I think it would take it to the next level, and it would still be very playable in today's day. The game is going on 6 years old, but it's still so good and so unique, and I think that more people would probably get into it if they were able to get something like that going. It runs at 30, there's some dips in some levels, but for the most part, it's pretty stable, and visually, it's also really good. One of the best looking games on the Nintendo Switch, but having it on Switch 2, that would be so good. And we don't know what the future of this franchise is going to be, just because Platinum Games seems to be in shambles. It looks like Takehisa Tura, who was the director for Astral Chain, he has left the company. Obviously, Hideki Kamiya has left the company. Many of the higher-ups and tenured developers have left the company for other things, so we just don't know where the status of Astral Chain is going to be going forward. So I think the next best thing would say, hey, let's just get this game ported over. Let's get this game updated on the Nintendo Switch 2 and see how many more people actually decide to go out there and get it. Obviously, reprints would be good. Switch 1 and Switch 2 cartridges. That would be awesome as well if they can get that done. It's absolutely one of the best and unique action games that I've ever played. The combo system is incredible. There's so much depth within the gameplay. There's no need for any extra DLC or any extra expansions or anything. It's all included on the cartridge. It's a phenomenal experience from start to finish. So I highly recommend it. Even if it doesn't come to Switch 2, I highly recommend it playing the game because it's awesome. But this would be incredible if they were able to get it upgraded a bit. Next up is 3 different games, and that is Bayonetta 1, Bayonetta 2, Bayonetta 3, but the focus here will definitely be Bayonetta 3 because that's the game that runs the worst on the Nintendo Switch, and it would just be great because I played this game all the way through. There was so much controversy with this game when it launched because of the frame rate, because of Digital Foundry, because of what people were saying overall, because of how long it took and the quality of the game, and the lowest rated mainline normal Bayonetta game in the whole trilogy. So I think that a lot of those ratings were because of the frame rate for many people out there. So if you're able to get this thing upgraded to 60 frames, get it more stable, or at least get it better than what it was, I think that would be a huge boost to Bayonetta 3, and more people would check out that game because I saw people, especially for action games, they want that to be a silky smooth 60. You don't want dips because you're doing these fast blazing combos. So I think that for action games like Astral Chain, like Bayonetta, Devil May Cry, the 60 frames is far more important than many other things in the game. You got to do what you can to get it to that. So I absolutely see them potentially doing a Bayonetta 1 through 3 collection. They've already done a collection multiple times. If you look at the Wii U, there was Bayonetta 1 and 2 collection for the Wii U. They did Bayonetta 1 and 2 collection for the Nintendo Switch. So I expect them to do a Bayonetta 1, 2, and 3 collection for the Nintendo Switch 2 and potentially even have that upgraded there. But once again, Platinum Games, we don't know what's going on with Platinum, so overall there could be some issues there, but I do think that they could get somebody to get that ported, and it would give Platinum Games some easy work overall, something that's not new. You don't have to spend a ton of resources on it if they're remastering games like Astral Chain and Bayonetta. Gives them work, lets them work on some new things, and potentially new leaders could rise up to help salvage what's left of that company if you're porting over games like Bayonetta 1, 2, and 3. And I think that they would actually sell if you did a triple pack of Bayonetta 1, 2, and 3 for $60. You did Astral Chain remastered as well. These would actually be good sellers on the Nintendo Switch 2 or help boost those sales from the Nintendo Switch 1. Now, next up, we've got Pokemon games here. Pokemon Legends Arceus. This is my favorite Nintendo Switch Pokemon game, is Pokemon Legends Arceus. It's incredible, but man, is it rough at times visually and sometimes frame rate. Depends on how and where you're playing it. It does run stable for the most part, handheld mode. It's actually pretty good. If you run it docked, there are some dips here and there. It's not crazy bad, and it's definitely not like we're going to talk about with the next game when it comes to Pokemon, but I still think that it could benefit from a 60 frames. It's an open-ended game. There's Pokemon roaming out in the world, and there's definitely some low frame, some of the Pokemon in the background and stuff, and some pop-up and texture issues. If they can get all of that sorted out, once again, this is another game that could have a longer life on the Nintendo Switch 2 with a nice update, and it's an incredible experience. People would go back and play it. A smooth 60 would really bring out some of the beautiful art and some of the ways that they actually constructed the game. It is a really good game, but sometimes it looks like it's held together by glue in some parts. So if they can get this thing remastered on the Switch 2, I think it would be awesome, and I would go back and play it in a heartbeat, especially with Pokemon Legends ZA coming out sometime in 2025. So having both of these games upgraded for Nintendo Switch 2 would be ideal overall for the type of game that it is, the hybrid turn-based action where you have some battles that are action RPG-ish when you're fighting off against some of the Pokemon, and then you also have your turn-based battles as well. So I think it would be really cool if they were able to get that done, but I do think that there is another Pokemon game that needs it a lot more, and that is Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And technically you could say, yeah, Pokemon Sword and Shield, but Scarlet and Violet to me is the game that is in desperate need of an update. We felt that maybe there could be some stuff that happens with the Nintendo Switch 1, but that never came into fruition. There was a leaker overall that said, hey, look, the patch is coming with the Nintendo Switch 2, because he got a number of information right when it comes to the DLC and Pokemon that were coming out that were not revealed. So I still think that could be in play at this point. So it might be likely that we see Pokemon Scarlet and Violet on the Nintendo Switch 2 upgraded, and this is one of the best single players for a Pokemon game. It's one of the best competitive for a Pokemon game. It's got one of the best stories overall. It's just held back greatly by the frame rate and the resolution and the look of the game. But if you can get past that, some of the stuff in the game is incredible. The Area Zero stuff is super cool. The professors are dope. The story overall, the multi-pronged type of world where you're going throughout, it has a very good loop to it, and it's one of my favorite Pokemon games. Actually, one of the only Pokemon games that I've beaten all the way through since the DS era overall, because some of the other games like 3DS era and stuff, I just didn't care enough. Pokemon Sword and Shield didn't care as much, but this game actually has some really good hooks to it, and if you're playing competitive, it's actually really good because you don't got to worry about the open world issues that it does have. So I definitely think that this game is a prime candidate for it, and I think that Nintendo definitely owes us this one with the Pokemon Company and Game Freak to get that out free of charge if you already have the game, update it, or even re-release, whatever the case is. But I do think a free update for this one would be really good, or some type of upgrade path overall. It would make even more people buying it, because it looks like this game's going to pass up Pokemon Sword and Shield very soon here for the second best-selling Pokemon game of all time. So I think that a Nintendo Switch 2 version would be great, and it would greatly help this game, and I think more people would see like, okay, it's actually really good, and get back into it, because I know a number of people who didn't finish the game because it was just so brutal in some parts. Like even like the water areas, it would barely play. Like the frame rate was just so bad, so that needs to be fixed on the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, we're going to move on to the final one here, guys, and that's the Xenoblade Chronicles games. This can be Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, Xenoblade Chronicles X, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and all of the expansions / DLC. I think that every single one of these games could use it as action hybrid RPGs. They're very good games, and they run okay depending on what game that you're playing, but a 60 frames per second version would be ideal. It would look so smooth. I've seen it before on emulators and stuff, and it looks incredible to have it running in better resolution and better frame rate. I think that all of these games would get a nice boost overall when it comes to people being interested in them and playing, especially something like Xenoblade Chronicles 2. That's a game that has a lot of controversy when it comes to what people like and dislike, but overall it might run the worst out of all of the Xenoblade games on the Nintendo Switch. So Xenoblade Chronicles 2 would be great to have upgraded because that game is awesome and it's the best-selling Xenoblade game of all time at this point. So I think that that would be really good if Monolith Soft could get that done with Nintendo. Obviously, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, the most ambitious game in the series, if you look at it from a land-ground standpoint. Obviously, Xenoblade Chronicles X, from a world view, is just massive and could be the most ambitious in that way. But when it comes to fighting combat overall, that is crazy because the amount of characters that are on screen at the same time in real time, being able to jump right into the battles. So having 60 frames for that, and even a Xenoblade Chronicles X that's coming out very soon here, Definitive Edition, having an upgrade on the Nintendo Switch 2, that would be great too, zipping around in 60 with those mechs and everything. So I think that all of this would be nice overall. Now, there might be some other games that you guys can think of when it comes to first-party Nintendo Switch titles. I want to focus in on first-party published games. If we went into third-party realm, I mean, there's so many games that you can bring up. So you guys let me know what else you would like to see upgraded on the Nintendo Switch 2 when it comes to games. But what are your thoughts on this overall, guys? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, peeps, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch RPG videos and more right here on screen. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.